Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling one of the biggest questions of all time, really. How do we build a truly just society? Ever since people started living in groups, we've been trying to figure out the best way to organize ourselves.
And you know, it almost always boils down to this one central puzzle. We absolutely need rules and systems to keep things from descending into chaos. But the very systems we create to protect us can and often do threaten our freedom. It is such a delicate balancing act, and when you get it wrong, the consequences are just massive.
All right, so let's get right into it. If we're going to design some kind of ideal system, we have to start at the beginning. Why do we even have government at all? What made us decide to trade in a little bit of our personal freedom for this collective thing we call politics?
And this right here, this is the classic debate that started it all. On one side, you've got Thomas Hobbes. He imagined a state of nature that was just total chaos, a war of everyone against everyone. So for him, government is basically a deal we make for protection. We hand over power to a strong ruler just so we don't get killed. But then you have John Locke, who comes at it from a completely different angle. He says, hang on, we're born with rights, life, liberty, property. We create government by choice, with our consent, specifically to protect the rights we already have. Two totally different starting points.
So what this really tells us is that politics, at its core, isn't just about power for power's sake. It's supposed to be a tool. It's the mechanism we invented to solve big problems that we just can't tackle on our own. Things like building roads, or making sure we're all safe, or settling fights without just beating each other up. So an ideal system has to be really, really good at using that tool.
But, and it's a big but, we all know that this powerful tool can be seriously misused. So let's look at what happens when governance goes wrong. When the system, no matter what it's called, stops protecting the people it's supposed to serve.
If you look around the world today, it's basically a giant political laboratory. You've got everything from democracies, where citizens are supposed to be in charge, all the way to totalitarian regimes, where the state literally tries to control every part of a person's life. And then there's this murky middle ground, these hybrid regimes that kind of mix and match, which can be incredibly unstable and confusing for everyone living there.
Yeah, and authoritarian systems tend to follow a very similar playbook for holding on to power. It's all about centralizing control, crushing any kind of opposition, and using modern tech for mass surveillance. A really common move is to create these super vague laws against fake news or extremism, which lets them basically arrest anyone who disagrees with them. It's control, pure and simple.
But let's be really clear here. Democracies are not immune to problems. Not at all. They've got their own deep internal threats. Think about intense polarization, where it becomes us versus them, or the quiet influence of dark money in elections, which can make you wonder who's really calling the shots. These are the kinds of cracks that can weaken a democracy from the inside, slowly but surely. And when accountability in any system completely collapses, you can end up here, with a kleptocracy. The word literally means rule by thieves, and that's exactly what it is. It's the ultimate betrayal, where the entire government machine is just repurposed to make the people in charge rich. It's the absolute definition of corrupt governance.
Okay, so after seeing all the ways things can go wrong, you have to ask, is there a model out there that gets things mostly right? Well, let's head to Northern Europe for a minute and take a look at what's often called the Scandinavian or Nordic model. A lot of people see it as a really interesting case study for success.
So what's the secret sauce? At its heart, the Nordic model is this fascinating mix. You've got a universal welfare state, healthcare, education for all, paid for with high taxes. But, and this is key, they combine that with something called flex security. It basically means the job market is really flexible. It's easier to hire and fire people. But if you lose your job, there's a super strong safety net with great benefits and retraining programs to catch you. It's this balance of security and dynamism.
And the results? Well, they're pretty hard to argue with. These countries consistently top the charts for life satisfaction. And if you ask what the X factor is, many will point to this: social trust. It's incredibly high. People trust each other, and they trust their government. That trust is why they're willing to pay high taxes, because they see it working in well-run services with very little corruption.
Now, it is so important to say this model is not some perfect utopia you can just copy and paste. It's facing huge challenges from aging populations and the pressures of globalization. The only reason it keeps working is because of this commitment to what you might call adaptive governance. They are constantly tweaking, adjusting, and evolving to meet new realities. It's never finished. So what have we learned from all this? If we pull together the lessons from philosophy,
The failures we've seen, the challenges in our own systems, and the successes of places like Scandinavia, can we actually start to sketch out a framework for what a more just society might look like?
I think it would look something like this. First, the foundation has to be universal human dignity, the idea that every single person has worth. Then, the structure has to be built on the rule of law, with real checks and balances, so no one person or group gets too much power. The engine that makes it all run? That's us, an empowered citizenry that can actually hold leaders accountable. And the whole point? The goal of it all is a system that actively helps every person to flourish and live a good life.
And that leads us to maybe the biggest takeaway of all. This whole search for a just society, it isn't about finding a single perfect blueprint that we can just build and then walk away from. The ideal system isn't a static thing. It's a dynamic architecture, one we have to be constantly repairing, redesigning, and strengthening.
Which of course leaves us with one last massive question. If this architecture of justice is a project that's never really done, what's our role in it? How do we, you and me, as citizens, as neighbors, as voters, how do we pick up the tools and keep on building?